Yay! We are live. Welcome, everybody. We're going to dig into it here. I'm Mr. Schermerhorn, music and percussion instructor here at STC, South Texas College. And today we're going to kick off the lecture for American music entitled Surf Music. Okay, got my handy dandy water and another cold beverage here. So I'm going to list our goals today, but before I do that, I'll wait just a moment as people are joining us, and I'm going to list our goals, and we're going to jump into all the cool stuff for surf music. Of course, instrumental surf music and vocal surf music. Should be a lot of fun today. All right. I need to keep some drink or drinks handy here as we go through. All right. Let me make sure you can see the PowerPoint as we're going through today's class for American music, or if you're not in American music and you're just enjoying the cool history, awesome, thanks. All right. You see the PowerPoint on the screen for surf music. I'll periodically kind of check in, make sure we're all good there so you can see everything you need to know about, surf music, American music. Just make sure it's visible and all that. All right. Here we go. Okay. So the goals. Let's go through the goals for just a moment, and we'll go through all the cool and fun stuff. So the goals for today are for surf music is we got 7 goals for surf music. I know it sounds like a lot. I suppose I could kind of couple them up or double them up, but for the goals, what we're looking at is we want to know, goal number 1 for surf music is we want to basically have an intro to what is instrumental surf music and what is vocal surf. So goal number 1, instrumental surf versus, say, vocal surf. Like, what's up with that? Goal number 2, did somebody actually name surf music? And if so, who named surf music, where, why, and what's the story behind all that? Goal number 3 for surf music is it's pretty simple. Well, what are the first 2 surf songs? Do you know what they are? And if you do, is there stories behind any of that? And can we talk about it a little bit? Okay. Goal number 4, instrumental rock music of the times. Does that influence any of the music we're going to be talking about, today or really in any class? We want to get to that. What is the instrumental rock music of the times? Why is that so important for surf music's history? Okay. Goal number 5, Dick Dale and the Deltones. We want to know about who Dick Dale is and the Deltones and the music, of course. Goal number 6, the Beach Boys. Let's talk about the Beach Boys. Who are they? What's the music? Let's dig into it. And really, goal number 7, which I suppose I don't really need to have there, but this is always the kind of the overarching goal. And pretty much every lecture, whether it be American music, music caprice, or any musical history, historical class that at least I find myself drawn to, and I hope my students are drawn to this too, is the stories behind the music. So that's goal number 7, but really that's really an overarching goal for all of this particular American music course. What are the stories behind the music? Okay, so we're going to jump into it here. Those are our goals, and we move forward with basically surf, and we want to lead into to who Dick Dale is. We go over to the PowerPoint, make sure we're good to go there. We're going to move it up a little bit. Okay, surf music title slide 1 of 27. No, it seems like a lot. No, it's not too many here. Okay, so if we look at just some of the basics of surf music before we jump, headfirst into some of our artists for today. Really, it's simply just going to be that when we talk about surf music, specifically instrumental surf music, instrumental. We're talking, there's echo effects, there's reverb, maybe overdubbing, studio editing, but it's purely instrumental, straight up. It's instrumental. We haven't got to any kind of lyrics yet. And I've already put it on bullet point 2. It's like, who names surf music? Oh my gosh, we can't get to the goal that quick. Well, I'll share more about the story a little bit later, but basically in the history books, per Paul Johnson of the Bel Airs, he talks about how that, they're, they're doing these dances. Geographic Center for Surf Music is California, these groups basically playing in these ballrooms and dance rooms, and the end of the surf day, and all the surfers are done doing their surfing, and want to go out and dance and have a good time, and We have groups like, Dick Dale and the Deltones, other groups, the Bel Airs, and many, many other groups. And Paul Johnson says that he thinks that it was a guy by the name of Lance Carson, at one of these dances, hangouts, where, what we would call these instrumental surf groups were playing. It's like, hey, man, your music sounds like it does out there on the wave or something like that. And then Paul's like, I think that might have actually been Lance Carson. Now, you can verify this information. This is over on the National Association of Music Merchants, and they have the Oral Music History Project they've been working on for years. Heck, it's years, years and years and years. I don't recall the first year that they started this, but basically the National Association of Music Merchants, they started doing like the history of course, the music business. We're talking about music merchants, music business, and of all walks of life. And then at one point, they're just like, hey, maybe we should actually interview like the artist and not just the business side of things. Of course, they did, they have, they are, and it's really, really incredible. It's amazing. So you can hear Paul Johnson say what I just said, but really a much more elongated and detailed story. I'm giving you the short version and giving away one of the goals pretty quick. Now, the interesting thing about instrumental music, we look at this whole idea of reverb is it actually comes a year later after surf music had already been coined. Whether it really was Lance Carson or maybe there were other people involved in like that sounds like we're out there surfing the wave or like we're riding a wave or whatever. But reverb comes after the fact. Reverb is not the defining identity of instrumental surf. It comes a year after this had already, started to gain some traction and get some popularity. In the basics of surf music in terms of instrumental, we think of someone like the king of the surf guitar, Dick Dale, performing all these amazing, awesome concerts in the Rendezvous Ballroom in Balboa, if I can talk today, Balboa, California. So just some surf music instrumental basics. We move over to the basics of a vocal. We're just basically trying to hit, a little bit about instrumental, a little bit about vocal before we delve into the songs and maybe the members and some of the, or as many stories as we can get to in today's session. Okay, so let me check the slide. Yeah, you're good. You can see it. All right, surf music, vocal, awesome. Let's do this. Rock and roll, shake and bake. So you're looking at surf music, vocal. A lot of us think of the same thing it's Beach Boys, Yes, it's much more than that, but if I say surf music, I would gather that many of my students in all my courses, and I have done this before where the straw poll is always the same, people have heard of, Dick Dale and the Deltones, not the name, but maybe the particular song that everyone knows, Meeserloo, and I'll I don't want to spoil the thunder of where and how it's been used, but there's a reason why everybody knows the song without knowing who. So I'll get to that later, but if I say surf, you say Beach Boys. If I say surf music, you say Beach Boys. I don't know, Surfin' USA, surf this, surf that, possibly. But the Beach Boys do add lyrics to surf music, but they don't actually start there. This is what's really interesting. They do start off doing the same thing all the groups are doing, taking all their favorite bands' music and doing their own variations, covers, versions of the songs or whatever, and playing them, and even taking someone like Dick Dale's music, and Beach Boys would be like, hey, I'm gonna do a version of this Dick Dale song. Cool. I'm gonna do a version, of, I don't know, like this Chuck Berry song. Cool. So we have some of that going on. We talk about like vocal surf being about, it can be cars, girls, beach parties, big waves. Look, when the Beach Boys actually first came out, people didn't even like them. People were talking, you might call it like, trash talk, smack talk, let's go get them. Who do these Beach Boys think they are? Like, that's not surf music. I mean, that happens in all genre styles, forms of music, and all time periods where it kind of starts with the whole instrumental surf vibe. And then Beach Boys add lyrics to all that. When the Beach Boys do eventually they actually find their own stride and their own true voice, and they do hit it for sure. But the beginning was, I think, a little rocky with the public, but it soon gets, smoothed out. I think it's just finding that original authenticity. We talk about that a lot these days, but just finding like your true, like, your true something, aura, self, authentic, like your own voice. And when the Beach Boys did find their own voice, it's pretty amazing. That's not to say that they took away from anything to do with any of the instrumental surf groups or Bel Airs, Dig Down the Deltones, or any of the other groups out there, Ventures and taken away from. They weren't actually taken away. It certainly was. These things actually worked very, very cool in tandem, and a lot of connections and cool stuff here. So you could check out the song "Fun, Fun, Fun." You might dig on that a little bit. Um, if you want to, for Beach Boys "Fun, Fun, Fun" to kind of get you thinking a little bit. I won't go into the story of that song, what it's all about, but it's just really used as a basic example in just the first couple slides. If you want to get in the frame of mind of, say, what kind of movies, were happening, during this time, like Gidget in, 1959. I'm going to pull up. I can't put that on the screen. I mean, I suppose I could, but let me share. I'll share with you a couple things. What's interesting about the movie is, let me come back and check the PowerPoint too. Yeah, you're good here. I'll move it to the next slide in just a moment. When you look at if you look it up, look it up on the internet or watch the movie, there's actually things in the movie Gidget that you've heard before, where the whole movie is you're talking about um, you know, young woman, young girl. She's going to turn 17. Summer vacation. It's like I got a break before the senior year, and it's like, hey, I don't want to go. Her friends want her to go out and like go looking for a man. Get a boyfriend, something like that. And she's like, nah, I don't want to do that. And her, family wants to, connect her, hook her up with Jeffrey Matthews, and she's it's like resisting, the whole manhunting thing, telling her family, I don't want to hook up with this, you know, she doesn't want to go out with her parents that are trying to fix her up on a date, with the son of a friend of the family, basically. I mean, who really wants to do that? I mean, okay, so maybe some people do, but in terms of the movie and maybe even in real life, everyone's got kind of their own vibe on what they're feeling, So to each their own, eye the beholder, yes, as I always say. But I mean, it is a movie. Now she's hanging out, chilling at the beach, and she meets this surfer named Moondoggy. Okay, cool. She becomes infatuated with him. He doesn't really show any romantic interest. The character in the movie, I think it's Francine, but she's really kind of more into the whole surfing vibe, maybe more than to Mr. or Moondoggy's Mr. Okay. So she's really hip to the surfing thing, interested in in this surfer guy. He's not really feeling it, and maybe that's going to change, but it's interesting because in the movie Gidget associates, with this all male surfer gang, and you've heard like the term like Big Kahuna. Well, it's interesting because the Big Kahuna is the character in the movie that's, the boss, the ruler, the guy that's heading up the surfer crew. And so I may not have your attention of like, hey, this sounds really cool. Maybe this sounds boring to you. I don't know. But if you do want to get in the frame of mind of like the times and surf music, I do think this is a really great movie. At least looking up the story, and I'll share just a little bit more before we get out of here to the next thing. But so Gidget's hanging out, doing her thing. She kind of wants to make Moondoggy jealous. She gets one of the other surfers to be her date to the luau, and everything backfires, and the surfer that I think she hired him, or she gets him to do it. That surfer ends up saying, hey, Moondoggy, can you cover for me? Can you do this? And yeah, it all completely backfires there. So I mean, yeah, it sounds like I'm spoiling the show. So I don't want to spoil any more of the story, but if the story kind of piques your interest, yes, but do please look it up. Do watch the movie, or at least the trailer, just to kind of get in. One of the ways you can get into the frame of mind of the times is books and movies and poetry. It just can help, science, discoveries, philosophy. It can help you kind of understand how everything is a bit more interconnected than we believe that, of course, but it can sometimes be like not hard to believe necessarily, but um, there's all these connections that can be made by, when you look at whether it be like philosophy, history, music, you would think that they're just all completely different, but this is not how the world works. And that's why we're always saying, hey, go read a book. Hey, go watch a movie. Hey, go shoot some basketballs. Go look up at the stars. Like the different things that we do kind of all coalesce into the awesomeness that is life. So I'll leave the movie at that because I'm going to spoil the thunder if I don't. So I'll move forward here. All right. Get the let me reset PowerPoint. So we're going to go to the first surf song released. This first surf song, it's released first, but it's recorded second. This is Dick Dale and the Deltones. Let's Go Trippin'. Now I don't play the music in these live sessions due to copyright and/or I don't have a bunch of big fancy speakers behind me. In the future, I think I will. I will. But if you take a listen to "Let's Go Trippin'," that can kind of help you get into, hey, this is released like the very first song released, but recorded second. And you can also compare and contrast that to the Beach Boys' "Let's Go Trippin'," which is a cover of that. And if you listen to that, if you don't know anything about the Beach Boys and you were listening to this, you'd be like, is that really the Beach Boys doing a cover of Dick Dale and the Deltones? That sounds nothing like, Surfing USA or in either, Good Vibrations or something like that. And you'd be right, but we all start somewhere. We're all inspired by different kinds of things. And the Beach Boys they were digging "Let's Go Trippin'." So they did their version of it. So, check that out. All right. We'll go to the next song here. Okay, so our second surf song. So as we look at the second surf song, this is recorded first, but it's released second. So we have Paul Johnson on guitar. We have Eddie Bertrand on guitar. We have Jim Roberts on piano. Chaz Stewart on saxophone. Richard Delvey on drums. And there's, some other member changes. This is kind of typical of groups throughout the times where you'll have like the OG or the original crew, and then you might have some subs in on recordings or performances or gigs, and occasionally we have member changes. Some groups, bands more than others, but this is the crew, and you can listen to some pretty amazing interviews, podcasts, videos on the National Association of Music Merchants. So there's quite a few of the stories and/or history that I'm actually getting from this particular source. And I think it's important for students to know, like, where's Mr. S., where's Professor Ron getting this from? Well, I do have varied sources. I mean, I have, history of a lot of bands, like stacks of books where I've got history of different bands or genres or styles, just tons of books that I'm sampling from. But in terms of like straight up stories, like Paul Johnson talking about Lance Carson, or maybe other stories I'm going to share later on in this podcast, video class, or live stream, there's some really great ones I've got from the actual artists that have been interviewed. And those, man, they're really, I'm going to share information today about Dick Dale, and it's all from him. It's all from his actual interview, before he passed away. It's remarkable, truly remarkable. Now, remarkable, I got to find another word for what I'm about to say, because when I think about, like, Mr. Moto, man, Sublime always pops in my head. I wish I could jam that out right now, because I know that everybody here may be like, I don't know about Sublime, Mr. S. I like the Chili Peppers or Dream Theater or BTS or Taylor Swift. All of my students, you all like, love, and listen to your own kinds of music. But I'm always blown away when I hear something like, music from the 60s. You turn on the radio or you get a new record, CD, vinyl, whatever, and I'm like, whoa, Sublime. And they're using Mr. Moto in this. Oh, it's just really cool. So, check that out if you get a chance. All right. I'm going to go over to instrumental rock music of the time. Make sure you can see the PowerPoint as I'm going through here. Give me a second to readjust a couple things. All right. We want to get through from slides 1 through 11 before I dig into maybe some of Dick Dale's story. Okay. Getting us a clean start here on slide 6, and then around 11 or 12 we get into Dick Dale and the Deltones. So let's continue with one of our, the next big goal. I mean, we've got quite a few goals today, but understanding the music that they were listening to. Look, all these groups, they were listening to other music. Everybody that writes, composes, or performs, we don't just sit there and listen to our own music. In fact, a lot of times people record music, play music, practice music, perform. I mean, I play in a symphony orchestra, but I don't go home every day listening to symphony music. It's pretty typical for me to be on my way to playing, Tchaikovsky Symphony 4, and I'm playing that on timpani. But on the car, I'm listening to Eminem. In the car, I'm listening to, I don't know, maybe I'm listening to Rihanna or Kendrick Lamar. And then, I pull into the parking lot or whatever, and I'm double checking a few spots on the actual piece too. Like we all listen to different kinds of music. Where it's not like symphony people only listen to that kind. No, we listen to all kinds of music. So I think the point being is, if I say like, "Hey, check out Link Ray and the Raymen, Rumble," this power chord that Link Ray was so actually seeped in to surf music, and this instrumental surf music, and particularly for the way that Dick Dale played, and and other groups played. This power chord idea. It's all Link Ray, man. It's Link Ray and the Raymen. So you look at the groups that inspired other groups. This instrumental rock music at the time, they're important. Link Ray. Look at Dwayne Eddy. You look at groups like the Ventures, and it's like, so you maybe you don't know the song "Walk, Don't Run," but I'd be surprised if you've never heard Hawaii 5 But if you haven't, go listen to Hawaii 5 as soon as this is done, and then come back to the video in the comments and tell me like, hey, that Hawaii 5 song, I knew that, but I never knew the name of the group was the Ventures. Just give me something one upper. Everybody always asks them, "Do you have extra credit in your courses?" Not really, but I mean, leaving a meaningful comment in a video. I mean, participation for me is really where the extra credit, I suppose, would come from. So yeah, I'll do a few moments in the video where it tells me if people are watching, paying attention, and just engaged in, like, what's going on. Do you know Hawaii 5 Have you heard it before? Movies, sitcoms, commercials, that kind of thing. So Link Ray's more. It's more than just this contribution. This power chord is huge. As you go listen to any of these songs, you're going to hear some of that going on. You'll hear that. Goodness, you'll hear the inspiration from Link Ray in Dick Down the Deltones. You'll hear that in the Bel Airs. Oh my gosh, you'll hear it in one of our most famous songs ever called Wipeout. You'll hear huge inspirational power chords that all was inspired by Link Ray. We'll talk about Wipeout later and what's up with that. So, Link Ray, The Ventures, Rebel Rouser, Dwayne Eddy. This is all like some very important things. Now, you go over to, say, like, instrumental rock music at the time, and like, well, I don't know, Johnny and the Hurricanes. Do you feel like that might be a stretch? But you got to listen to the music. That's one thing that if I were to play every song on these live streams, it'd make them 2-3 hours, not 2 or 3 hours necessarily, but I'd have to really play very particular parts, or I'd have to like make these instead of an hour long or whatever. I'd have to cut it down to, I don't know, maybe 20-30 minutes, so there's enough for songs. But do listen to this music, and it'll be my hope in the future to have a different studio set, and I can play clips of these. But Johnny and the Hurricanes, maybe James Bond, James Bond theme. Maybe Sheba, Red River Rock, Crossfire. Even if you don't know any of those, honestly, I'd be surprised. Anytime I've done a straw poll in a live class or any kind of activities in hybrid or online, out of these four, it's never failed. It could. I know that it can. I know. But most of my students, maybe not all, but most of them have heard of at least one of these songs, like actually listened to it. I didn't say they liked it. Maybe, hopefully they did. But, but they didn't know that, Johnny and the Hurricanes had maybe, done this song. Okay. So it's some instrumental rock music of the time. Let's go over to slide 8. This is slide 8 of 27. We want to talk about, what happens before surf, or what happens around the time of surf, or what's the one group that really, like, probably, if we were to just say, what's the most influential group in the history of surf music? I know that's a tall order. It might be a stretch, and maybe Google, the internet, and everyone's like, no, that Mr. S, Professor Ron dude, he's wrong again. Well, I hope not. I think in listening to all this music, when I look at the history and what professors have been saying and researchers and music historians have been saying for 20, 30, 40 years and longer. I mean, when we go all the way back, we're talking from, the 60s up to now, we're talking, goodness gracious, it's a long time, it was 60 to 60 plus years, 60, 70 years, 60 plus years, whatever. But, and the Fireballs really brought the heat. You got George Tomsko playing lead guitar, Dan Trammell on rhythm guitar, Chuck Tharp on vocals, Stan Lark on bass, and Eric Budd just killing it on drums. They really brought a lot of influence into surf music. If you were to ask any of these, at least instrumental surf groups or music of the time, they all pretty much had the same answer in terms of like what could you, is there any group that you could call like the OG surf guys or the original surf music, or at least the group that inspired a huge part of what surf is all about and its vibe, and it's the Fireballs. Now you have to listen to some of the music though to get that vibe. This is kind of a tough sell for me right now if I'm not gonna play like stuff, and I'm not sure that me just putting Sugar Shack on is going to be enough for you to go, oh, I don't see it yet. So you might not see it yet, but we want to keep our eyes on the prize here in terms of that. So we look at the Fireballs, just lineup changes that can happen. But Tharp, Bud, and Trammell left the group in the early '60s. The Fireballs do add Doug Roberts on drums in the '60s. When they went to Petty's studio, the singer pianist Jimmy Gilmer, they're talking born September 15th, 1940 in Chicago and raised in Amarillo, Texas. Jimmy added to the group in the early '60s. You can take a look at, listen, like I said, listen to Sugar Shack, but not as like, don't take Sugar Shack as like, is that it? Like, is that the one? It's just an example. Hopefully that's a good example of just getting to know the group. Are there other examples that really combine together to show a testament of the Fireballs' influence on instrumental surf and surf in general? Yes, but I think Sugar Shack is going to be a great start. I gather that I probably had hundreds or thousands of students that are going to watch this and then go look up Sugar Shack and be like, oh my gosh, I know that song. But you didn't know that it was, the group's name was the Fireballs. I think that's the coolest thing about music, is that there's all this music that but you didn't actually know that you knew it. I mean, I know it's kind of wordy or whatever, verbose, whatever. It's a lot to say, right? But there's so much music that we all know because of movies and sitcoms and commercials, and you go to shopping at HEB, or maybe you go to Starbucks and they're playing music, or wherever we go, it's like music is so ubiquitous that hearing is defined as perception of sound, and we're always taking in sights and sounds and music and just everything all around us that, you go listen to Sugar Shack and you might have heard it before. And if you haven't, then now it's gonna pop in your mind somewhere. Or it'll be new. Either way, it's cool. I'll get you to recognize it or get you to enjoy it for the first time. That'll be exciting. All right. Now, if we move over to last part of the Fireballs, maybe you want to check out the song Bottle of Wine too. I think that'll help. Let's see, overdubbed some Buddy Holly material on a few albums. The Buddy's Buddy Jimmy Gilmer album, doing some Holly covers. This one was pretty killer. Norman Petty is the well-known producer at Clovis Studio, Clovis, New Mexico. There's quite a few stories about this, but one of the stories goes like this: is that I'm going to scroll back up to the name, but George Tomsko, he wanted to meet Buddy Holly. Sorry, he wanted to meet Buddy Holly. He wanted to work with Norman Petty. I don't have all the full details in my notes here, but the basics of the story, or the crux of the story, is that maybe George called, but there was some kind of phone conversation, and they did end up heading to that studio and getting some studio time under the guise of, hey, we've got a performance in that area. We're going to be down. Can we come in and hang out and have a chat? maybe you know, uh, meet the producer, um, and the phone conversation is basically one of those conversations where it's like, hey, well, if you're going to be in town anyway, go ahead and stop by. They do stop by and they get to basically show Norman Petty what they can do. I don't recall; it may have been a Saturday, it may have actually been a Sunday, and it was. I think it may have been a Sunday because if I remember correctly, Norman Petty said something along the lines of, like he was digging the stuff that they were showing him, and then the group was, asking about, hey, well, what about recording, and Norman Petty, well, I don't record on Sundays or whatever. So whatever day it was, the basics of the story was, the Fireballs wanted to go out. George wanted to meet. I mean, Buddy Holly was lots of people's heroes, of course. I mean, huge, huge. And George wanted to meet Buddy Holly. George knew that yeah, Norman Petty is the guy that's producing and working with Buddy Holly, and under the guise of them like having some kind of gig there, which they didn't. It's like, hey, well, let's go out there and we can show them what we can do. But when you're basically auditioning. When you show somebody what you can do, that was kind of like an audition to see, well, if you know can Norman do something. It wasn't like come out here and visit with me and you're going to record on the same day. It was basically like an audition. So while they passed the quiz, the test, they passed that audition, so to speak. Um, Norman Petty's like, well, hey, I'm busy doing this, or maybe it was Saturday because maybe the next day was Sunday, but whatever. The whole point of the story on when they were doing the gig was Norman was like, well, I'm available on this day, so the Fireballs they basically just kind of had to chill out and either go back home or stay in town for a few days. Because Norman's like, yeah, well, just you can head back out of here and I can meet with you in a few days on this day or whatever. We can go. And while there's certainly more to the story to that, and there's more details, that's kind of the heart of the connection with Norman Petty, and there's a little bit more. Maybe heck, I didn't dig into George and the Buddy Holly connection. I'm sure there's more to that part. Maybe George ran into him and got to chat. Possibly, but that I'm not counting this one as one of the big stories. I don't have necessarily all the details on this one, but it definitely caught my attention in the research. Something I want to dig into a little more. Let's go over to Will Glover and the Pyramids. This is Long Beach, California. Check the PowerPoint slide here. Okay, make sure you can see it okay. I'm going to bring this up, and then we get over to Dick Dale. Okay. So there we go. Is that okay? Make sure you can see it. Yeah, I'm just adjusting a little bit. Well, I can't show everything for Dick Dale. It's a lot of information. Maybe I can do something like that. Okay. I'm going to cut off the top just a little bit, but that way you can see a little bit of Will Glover and the start of Dick Dale, King of the Surf Guitar. Okay. So Will Glover and the Pyramids, Long Beach, California. I'm saying that again. Will Glover is among the first wave of surf rock guitarists. Their song says Penetration in 1963. Huge success, and it leads to really several important performances, including a dozen TV programs such as Dick Clark's American Bandstand and the movie Bikini Beach with Annette Funicello and Frankie Avalon. It's a big one. You get a chance to listen to that song. There's some serious energy in that song. Okay, I'm just scrolling back up to check my Fireball stuff. All right, Will Glover and the Pyramids. All right. Okay, Dick Dale and the Dale Tones. We're going to get into it here. All right, let me bring over some notes too, just a moment. All right. Okay, checking the slide here on the stream. All right, yeah, there we go. We're good. I always like to check. I know students are in and out, and some will be watching this live, or some will be watching this for weeks, months, or years to come. Okay, so you got some slides looking pretty good there. Now, what can I tell you? What can Professor Ron tell you here about Dick Dale, King of the Surf Guitar? Well, we call him the King of the Surf Guitar. Look, he was he was very rhythmical. I mean, he brought some wicked, amazing power. He could not read music or even play all the scales without making mistakes. And he played a right-handed guitar upside down without restringing the guitar like Jimi Hendrix, and maybe eventually Dick Dale. He may have eventually started actually restringing the guitar, possibly. He does eventually also acquire a proper left-handed guitar, but at least in the beginning, he just played a right-handed guitar upside down. In the beginning, he plays the right-handed guitar upside down, no restringing in the beginning, anyway. But he does, like I said, he does get the proper left-handed guitar. With as strong as a player as he was, yeah, he may have done some restringing as he moved along. Now, um, Dick Dale partnered with Leo Fender to test new equipment. After Dick Dale blew up several Fender amplifiers, Leo Fender and Freddie Tavares, they saw Dick Dale play at the Rendezvous Ballroom, Balboa, California. Now I'm saying it right. Yay. Well, I hope so. They identified the problem arose from Dick Dale. Like, basically, he was creating a sound louder than the audience screaming. Yeah, this is a concern, right? This leads us to the Fender Showman amp, and it allows Dick Dale to basically attain a significantly louder volume levels that were unobtainable by then conventional equipment. This is very cool. We keep moving forward, and we have Dick Dale's combination of a Fender Stratocaster with another cool upgrade, the dual Showman amp. This really brings down the house. This is really cool. You gotta take a look at this stuff. It is wicked cool. What about the music though? What's up? Like, to really understand King of the Surf guitar, it's like you gotta really listen. So you probably have heard of Meserlou. A couple things have made that really popular and maybe overly famous in some regards, but I think it's pretty cool. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about Pulp Fiction. So Quentin Tarantino, Pulp Fiction, and it's in the intro of the movie. I didn't like rewatch it or double check all the spots, but I do know I do remember it being in the beginning. So we have the Black Eyed Peas, Pump It, and they use like all of Meserlou. It's like it's going throughout the whole song. It's pretty neat. So, what is this Meserlou business all about? Well, Meserlou, this is a folk song from the Eastern Mediterranean region, and it's got origins in the Ottoman Empire. The original author of pretty much any folk song, we don't know who the author is. We look at Meserlou, okay, maybe Meserlou is Arabic or Greek. I mean, Jewish musicians in the early 1900s, played the melody. Dick Dale's version was influenced by an early Arabic folk version played with an oud. It's a short neck lute type, pear-shaped instrument, and it's got 11 or 13 strings grouped in 5 or 6 courses. This is commonly used predominantly, say, like in music of maybe Western Asia, Northern Africa, but this also includes Saudi Arabia, Syria, Egypt, Israel, Lebanon, Iraq, Palestine, Kurdistan, Somalia, Yemen, Iran, Sudan, Armenia, Greece, Turkey. Some of these I can't even say. Azerbaijan, North Africa, Shaibi, uh, uh, and maybe Andalusian classic music. It's a lot. I'm trying to just go. It's almost like a full scale list of places that the melody has possibly traveled through. So you listen, check out Pulp Fiction. And take a listen to that Pulp Fiction intro with Meserlou. Check it out. See what you think. Listen to the Black Eyed Peas, Pump It. And then if you listen to Black Eyed Peas, Pump It, like, can you hear that Meserlou is in there? You might have thought, oh, the Black Eyed Peas made that up. No, they didn't. That is this folk song, and Dick Dale did his version, and people have been actually using his version, whether it be Pulp Fiction, Black Eyed Peas, or whoever. Okay. Now, let me give you some basic Dick Dale info. I'll go through some bullet points. I'll check the slide, make sure you're seeing everything okay. So, okay. All right, the 13 thing we're going to come back to in a minute. All right. Okay, that's looking good. Yeah, I want to make sure you can see uh, the first two slides before we do the his 13 thing. Okay, hopefully that's yeah, I think we'll be okay there. We'll leave it there. Let me go through some of these basic details here. It's basically you can call this bio deeds details, but Dick Dale's info. Okay, so Dick Dale was a surfer. Um, Full name Richard Anthony Mansour, born May 4th, 1937, died March 16th, 2019. Father, Lebanese descent, mom, Polish, Belarusian. Um, we're talking Dick Dale played piano, played trumpet, ukulele, guitar, terabaki, and oud. Um, Believe it or not, Dick Dale was inspired by Hank Williams and Arabic music, but you know what? Maybe some Elvis too. Um, he actually did hang out with Elvis, and they used to drive around together on Hollywood Boulevard, and you can hear Dick Dale talk about their fun shenanigans and hangouts in some interviews, which is very cool. The first song that Dick Dale ever played on the ukulele was called the Tennessee Waltz. You can hear him talk about that as well. Um, Fender custom made let me say that again. Fender custom made amplifiers, basically the first ever 100-watt guitar amplifier. This is the collaboration with Leo Fender and Dick Dale. Um, Dick Dale wanted to be a vet, but instead he took care of animals and raised them. We're talking about elephants, African lions, tigers, and more. He's got a ranch. There's all these kind of sounds, growls and roars, where Dick Dale was like, he's emulating on the guitar. You know, Pulp Fiction in 1994, opening credits. I want to reiterate that. Pump It, Black Eyed Peas. Want to also reiterate that. And then with the deets, I want to close with Dick Dale being inducted to the Hollywood Rock Wall of Fame, and we're talking 1996. All right, so that's a little bit about Dick Dale. Well, hopefully a lot, but will get us going there. Now, let's spend a few minutes. Let me come over here. Let's see, a lot of stories here that I want to share. Okay, I'm going to double check this. Okay. Before I move on to the story of Wipeout, let's talk about Dick Dale and the significance of 13, as well as just a little bit more of the story there. Okay, checking the slide. Okay, great. Just making sure you can see everything that's there for anybody that's here live or anybody that watches after. So, the significance of 13, he felt like his lucky number was 13. You can hear Dick Dale talk about this on the National Association of Music Merchants, where they have this, I talked about earlier, the video cast podcast. On the podcast, he gets very specific about this list I have. I just basically pulled it from Dick Dale talking. NAMM does it's an hour and some change, and part of that is they're listing clips of the interview with Dick Dale, and he spends a few minutes going through my lucky numbers, lucky number 13. And he talks about, an M is the 13th letter, in the alphabet. And then we're all like sitting there going like, wait a second, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. It's like, what? No, like, no way. And like, we're trying to sit there and count to see, if you go through and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, whatever. Like, it's like you kind of want to test it. It's like we're all like math wizards in our day and age, but you see M and you're like, no way, for real. But at any rate, you get the point. Me, having a good time, counting. But serial numbers on airplanes, there's 13 in there. Dick Dale's street address or addresses supposedly had, 13 in there. Dick Dale's life story on the 13th in the Congressional Hall of Records, White House. I mean, he's inducted into the Congressional Hall of Records on the 13th. Like, it's like he felt like not only is lucky, this probably turned out to be his like favorite number, lucky number. Is it coincidence? Is it his favorite? Is it his lucky number? Combination of all that, but he really hammers away at the interview on this when he talks about like he's got a close connection to the number 13, and he showcases this in numerous examples. And we're all sitting there counting on a legal pad or our fingers or looking up his airplanes or like did his address really have that? Was he really inducted on the 13th in the Congressional Hall of Records? And either way, it grabs our attention. He was fascinated with this, and he shares that. So. Okay, let's go over to, we want to, before I get to the wipeout here, talk about, just the Kenpo stuff and more of the legendary stuff. Well, well, for me, it's good early evening or good evening. Someone is chatting. We got some live comments. Sup, sir? Hey, I'm doing fine, talking about some surf music. Welcome. Who do we have here? It's Psycho 3V 6:33 p.m. Sup. Hey, same to you. Surf music. That's what's up. All right. Thanks for joining. Let's finish off with Dick Dale so I can give you the funness of Wipeout. If you go to Google, DuckDuckGo, Bing, Yahoo, I don't know, whatever you're using to look up stuff, you'll find this Kenpo karate sticker. And Elvis and Dick Dale both had it on their guitars. Check that out. This is a pretty neat thing. Now, in a previous video lecture, and I've talked about this in my live classes, hybrid classes, pretty much in all my classes, where for Elvis's guitar, he didn't even want that. He wanted it on there, but the guy that actually made Elvis's guitar, he didn't want to put the sticker on there. I mean, there's a story that goes pretty much like this, where the guy that made Elvis's guitar, he was done, ready to go, and Elvis's dad, Vernon, went to get a special guitar made for Elvis for his birthday, and it was like it was ready to go, and then he's got the sticker in his hand, and like he didn't want to put it on there, and someone calls him up and tells him pretty much like put that sticker on, boy, or something like that. And so they were both Elvis, and I give more details on that Elvis story, of course, in the Elvis lecture, but keeping this moving forward here, they both do share this passion for Kenpo, and they both, if you look up their guitars, you can see the Kenpo stickers on their guitars, both Elvis Presley and Dick Dale. So check that out, and you want to have more of the Elvis story, check out my Elvis video. I think it's pretty fun. Now, when it comes to guitar, you've heard me talk about Dick Dale was left-handed, but created his signature sound on a right-handed Fender Stratocaster that he flipped over and essentially played upside down with extra thick strings. Okay, so we're talking about Dick Dale as this music legend, and we're talking about his association with Leo Fender, and the new Dick Dale signature acoustic guitar from Fender, and he's helping out test out pianos and amps and guitars. There's just all this really cool stuff. I think to really get at the heart of Dick Dale as being the king of the surf guitar, you just need to listen to the music. Maybe Meeserloo won't be enough to convince you, but listen to the music, and dig into that a little bit. And I think hopefully you'll at least have some fun. Or you can go through and try to figure out, all right, is this guy really the king of the surf guitar? Let me listen to more music and figure this out. I'm hoping it'll be a good time. Hopefully I've shared enough to get us going. So let's move over to a group called the Surfaris. And we want to spend some time talking about, yeah, cool. Oh, awesome. Thanks for the cool. Hope we're having a good time here. Rafa, hey, thanks for joining. So the Surfaris, it's such an important group because you may have heard Wipeout. I mean, I'll try to act it out later, but I don't know, drumming on the desk and trying to do the voice effect or the crackling sound. I'm gonna attempt it, but I'm not sure if I might be an epic failure on my part, or maybe I'll be a meme, or at least it'll be funny in a live streamer for years to come when people watch it to get a good laugh out of Professor Ron trying to do some Wipeout stuff. But the group that comes up with Wipeout, Surfaris, we're talking about Bob Berryhill playing rhythm guitar. We have Jim Fuller playing lead guitar. Pat Connolly playing bass. We have Ron Wilson playing drums. Excuse me, Ron Wilson drums, drummer. But his bandmates sometimes call him Ronnie. I guess the same as Mr. S. You know, my friends from younger days would call me Ronnie. Now I'm Mr. Ron, Professor Ron. Okay, Ron, Ronnie, it's all the same thing. But you got to check out the song Surfer Joe. I put that on there. It's like, hey, I know I'm going to talk about the story behind Wipeout, but don't forget, on the other side of the 45, it was Surfer Joe. Okay, so if we, I'm going to move past the members part of the slide so I can come over here to Surfaris. Make sure you can see the PowerPoint. I'm showing the Beach Boys. I'm going to dig into them in just a few minutes. But let me move over here in my notes, and I want to share this story with you. So, you know, we have Bob Berryhill, Pat Conley, Jim Fuller, and Ron Wilson. They write Wipeout basically almost on the spot while at a recording studio. If I can say that right, while at a recording studio in Rancho Cucamonga, California, in late 1962. So look, they just recorded Surfer Joe, as I was just trying to kind of hype you on it. And then the manager's like, boys, you need a second song for your 45. And so the drummer Ronnie Wilson, just out of the blue, starts playing. He just starts banging. He starts drumming away. I don't have like the whole thing memorized, but he just starts. You know, imagine like, you know, this manager dude's telling this young band, you know, what else you got? You know, we need. It's a 45. There's a side A and a side B. You know. And, you know, probably the band thought about it. Maybe they thought about it for a few seconds or maybe a few minutes. But from the way the story goes, it sounds like the drummer jumped in pretty quick and is like, it just starts going away. You know, just starts going, you know, and then and you get these really cool power chords. Oh, it's awesome. I'm a terrible singer. I feel like I'm a pretty good drummer, but yeah, I don't have their, you know, my Wipeout, you know, prepared to blast away. I'm just playing some fast. Just some fast on the desk. Heck, I don't, you know, if it can even be heard through a, you know, live stream lecture. At any rate, I'm just having some fun here, banging on the desk. And you do get them power chords and Wipeout. You get that bum, 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 bum. You know, I can't sing it, but you get like the power chords. You get this moving line, and you get Ronnie Wilson just going to town on some drums. It's exciting, but. So maybe you know the music just from the drumming thing, possibly. Maybe you know the song name Wipeout, but maybe for some people you don't know. Oh, the group's name was Surfaris, and you're like, wait, how you spell that? Surfaris. Whoa, wicked. All right, cool. Well, I hope so. My bad singing or makeshift drumming on a table, trying not to knock over anything over here, especially don't knock your drink over, right? Yeah. All right. So, you know, they record Surfer Joe. The manager's like, hey, got to get this other song. They do it. It's like, man, the rest really kind of is history. You know, they add some chords, this wicked moving line with some serious energy, and, you know, Wipeout has stood the test of time, and it probably will continue to do so. It's used a lot all over the place. So, got to give that shout out to Surfaris and Wipeout. I can't say it. You know, what's wild about that whole thing is, you know, yeah, as I told you, I'm terrible at this stuff. But, you know, when you listen to the very beginning of the song, I think this is really, really interesting because they didn't have that other song, the B song or whatever, and the manager's telling me, you got to get another song. That Ronnie just starts drumming away. You know, us Ronnies, we all like to drum, right? And, you know, they're playing, but there's some discussion about how to start the song. And basically, they used, I don't know, some kind of board. They had to use some kind of board. They wanted to emulate. They're having a conversation about how can we emulate the sound of like the crackling surfboard or breaking the surfboard or whatever. And so they do that with the board, and, you know, the manager, like, hears that, and that's when the manager's like, you know, ha 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 ha, wipe out. Like, and I said, I've already done it twice, very badly, I might add. But if you actually listen to the song and you hear that crackling board sound, and then the guy that does the ha ha ha, wipe out, that's the manager. Like, and it happened pretty organically, where it's like as soon as this manager dude, he heard him talking about it, and they actually did the sound effect and were recording it, the dude just jumps in. Now, that could be exaggerated, honestly. It's possible that the way this story's kind of been handed down, maybe they were just talking about it and, they did a couple takes, whatever. But whether the manager did it right away or whatever, it's a cool story. And the manager really is the one that did the ha 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 and the wipeout and this crackling board sound. Um, Either way, it's a great story. It did happen, no matter how it came down, whether the dudes were just talking about the board crackling idea, and then the manager guy records a few takes, or maybe it really did happen where they're just, all right, guys, we got to try this, and they find some wood or board or whatever they do to get that crackling sound, and the managers, just bust it out. Like, I almost imagine that as a kind of a really cool, live or organic moment. But either way, the elements of the story are right on the money in terms of who did what. Okay. All right, let me go over to the PowerPoint, and we want to delve into the Beach Boys. All right. And we'll move this up. Okay, Beach Boys. We want to get to the beginning of the Beach Boys here. I'll make sure you can see that. Okay. Yay, you can see it. Okay, cool. Awesome, guys. Thank you. Love the feedback and the comments, everybody. Appreciate that. All right. We're going to take a look for slide 18, 19, 20, or around that area. So for the Beach Boys, if we look at, okay, well, is there one group that kind of defines or maybe dominates this new surf music sound? Well, yeah, sure. Beach Boys. And if we were to talk about like who's the group that led the way on, like vocal surf. But it's not just vocal surf. Obviously, when we talk about instrumental surf in and of itself is just instruments, no vocals or lyrics. When we talk about the Beach Boys as leading the way on this new surf music sound and vocal surf, of course there were still instruments, but now it's like you got full on, everything, So the Beach Boys, they originate in Hawthorne, California in 1961 with brothers Brian Wilson, Carl Wilson, and Dennis Wilson. Mike Love was their cousin, and Al Jardine was one of their friends, a friend. Now, they have an early hit. This is called Surfin. And from Surfin, they sign with Capitol Records. They eventually get somewhere, let's see, we're probably over 30 or so top 40 hits, including around, let's say, 8 in the top 5. I had to double check, make sure I get all this. Look, the musical style of the Beach Boys will be discussed in some detail. Actually, I want to talk about this in as much detail as I have time for, but I can't talk about everything. I think in terms of me talking about maybe the details of the Beach Boys, I'll try to dig into that more with the songs, maybe more of the stories than anything. But we could dig into the elements of music, honestly, hardcore and good vibrations. But we could break down like the whole lyric vibe and, Surfin' USA. This is all like fun stuff to do. While their notoriety really begins with Surfin' Safari. This is Surfin' Safari by the Beach Boys. It's number 14 in 1962. This song initiates their surf music phase, and the follow-up release, Surfin' USA, is number 3 in 1963. These first two songs, they were rockers. If we go over to say like Surfer Girl, the Beach Boys showed that their sound could be adapted to this slow ballad, which is very cool. You might have heard songs like Little Deuce Coupe or Be True to Your School, Fun, 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 I mentioned earlier. I Get Around. Every time I think like I Get Around, I'm like, is that from a movie? Is it Look Who's Talking or Look Who's Talking To? Or, I don't know, maybe. It's been so long, I don't remember. I didn't include that in my notes. Help Me, Rhonda. Every time I see like "Help Me Run," I'm always thinking "Help Me Run." It just pops in my mind. California Girls. Barbara Ann, Sloop, John B. The list just keeps going, but this will hopefully get you thinking about, who the Beach Boys are, what are their names, where did they form, who was their cousin, who was their friend, and, of course, some music. Now, we move over to the PowerPoint for just a moment here, covering, yeah, we got Hawthorne, California. The influences are important because we tend to think like, oh, they listen to this or that, or they listen to their genre style of music. But the Beach Boys were influenced by the Four Freshmen, hugely by Chuck Berry and the Everly Brothers. In terms of like vocals, it's the Four Freshmen and the Everly Brothers. I mean, there's been stories about the Beach Boys, chilling out, hanging out, or just walking home from school, whatever, and they're like singing either Four Freshmen songs or maybe some Everly Brothers stuff and harmonizing together or whatever. Different stories about that in different times of their life. And, a lot of us as, young people, kids, even adults, we have our happy days, and I'll just be walking around campus, singing a song, and like someone's like looking at me. Is that old professor dude singing a song out loud in public? It's kind of fun to sing a song. And, of course, so brothers are no exception, especially when you're younger, much more uninhibited, and just sing songs and air guitar, air drum, or whatever. Or you're playing video games and you start humming the song. It's a normal, humanistic kind of thing. Chuck Berry was huge, 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 huge. We see some songs that are straight up just copied, and got the Beach Boys in trouble a little bit when they're, taking, Chuck Berry songs and completely ripping them off and then writing their own lyrics. And this is why when you go to YouTube or you look at any of the albums, and you're going to see Chuck Berry's name on the songs that they used. Originally, Chuck Berry wasn't given credit, and there was some, there were some issues with that. It was all resolved, all happily, I might add, and now you'll see Chuck Berry's name on the songs that the Beach Boys basically took and then kept, Chuck Berry's song, but then put their own lyrics to it. Really, it was their way of like, paying homage or saying, Chuck Berry, your music is amazing. We want to take your melodies and harmonies and write our surfing kind of music to that. They did, and while maybe they got in trouble for a little bit or slap on the wrist, so to speak, this is why you're going to see Chuck Berry's name on some of the songs. Because if you listen to, you know, Chuck Berry's Johnny Be Good, then you go back and listen to this, Beach Boys song, you'd be like, oh, that is the song. I'll come back to the Chuck Berry Beach Boys connection in a little bit. Dennis Wilson is the only member who could actually surf, and we want to know the first manager, Murray Wilson, is the father of the Wilson Boys. Capitol Records, first hit, Surfin'. While it may not be your favorite, it's just kind of the important deets to know. And the Beach Boys at the beginning. You heard me talk about Beach Boys Surfin' Safari. Number 14 and 62. Maybe not huge necessarily, but then kind of it is though, because we're trying to pay attention to the lineage of them kind of getting their start and who the manager was and who the brothers and the friend and the cousin and the different songs. So we want to kind of pay attention to that flow of the different songs and how they came out, when they came out, and everything was on the rise. So I'm just really notating. It's like, surfing and surfing safari and surfing like US. You're trying to like, there's all these surfing songs, like which one's which. Just go start listening to the music, and it all starts to make a little bit more sense on all this. So let me get up here as we keep going here. You can see the Beach Boys original lineup. Awesome. You've heard the names, but it's like, I should have put this slide sooner. Sorry, guys. But your original lineup, looking at, Brian Wilson, who is the songwriter, producer, co-lead vocalist, bassist, keyboardist, and more. Carl Wilson, our lead guitarist, backing vocals, lead vocals on some tunes. Dennis Wilson, the drummer. Mike Love, who's a singer, songwriter, and lyricist. Al Jardine, rhythm guitarist, singer, and songwriter. And there's other members. I'm going to bring up at least one more, but other members of the group. This is the OG or original lineup here. Okay. I'm going to go to my notes here because I do want to make sure to finish the a part of the Chuck Berry story. Let me just go ahead and share with you this side note. It'll come up later as we're winding down the live stream on surf music. But I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about Bruce Johnston. This is around 1965. Bruce Johnston joins the Beach Boys for live performances, and Bruce is initially filling in for the group's co-founder Brian Wilson. And Johnston's first appearance on the band's record was as a vocalist on California Girls in 1965. He later contributed original material to the group's albums, like The Nearest Faraway Place on 2020 in 1969, Tears in the Morning on Deirdre on this is let's see Tears in the Morning and Deirdre. This is on Sunflower 1970. Disney Girls 1957. We also have Surf's Up, but some of that for Bruce Johnston. So if you go listen to California Girls, you can hear the awesomeness of Bruce Johnston, Beach Boys singer. And you can hear Bruce talk about this on the National Association of Music Merchants Surf podcast, and he's got a spotlight in there as well. All right. I'm going to move to Surfin USA. This is the one that comes up a lot in the class. So Beach Boys Surfin USA. You have lyrics by Brian Wilson, but this is set to the music of Sweet Little 16. Now, this is not the only song, because we can see this in, they really liked Sweet Little 16, but they also liked, as I was talking about earlier, Johnny Be Good. So you can hear some Beach Boys songs where they're taking Sweet Little 16. They also do the same thing with Johnny Be Good. Maybe there's more. I didn't go back and re-listen to everything, but those two pop on my mind. And the one I'm going to focus on is Chuck Berry, Sweet Little 16. Now, Brian does write lyrics, but Mike Love also contributes to the lyrics on Surfin' USA. And we go over to, we're looking at, this will take us from slides 21 to 24. And let me share this quote with you, and I can put on the screen as well. But let me see if I have it. Yeah, let me go to that now. This is from Brian Wilson. So I was going with the girl called Judy Bowles, and her brother Jimmy was a surfer. He knew all the surfing spots. I started humming the melody to Sweet Little 16, and I got fascinated with the fact of doing it. And I thought to myself, God, what about trying to put surf lyrics to Sweet Little 16's melody? The concept was about, all right, they're doing this in the city, and they're doing that in the city. So I said to Jimmy, hey, Jimmy, I want to do a song mentioning all the surf spots. So he gave me a list. This is directly from Brian. Hopefully I got that all as best as I could read it and as accurate. But he got the list, and I'm going to share this with you. You can certainly look them and verify. I do think the story is behind the music, as I'm getting on this in the live streams. It's the part that's typically, I don't know, I feel like I don't want to necessarily say it's my favorite, but it kind of is. I mean, if I have to think about, okay, like, is it dates? Is it people? If I think about what's the thing that resonates in the history the most, I feel like for me, and maybe I hope many historians would agree, it's the stories behind the music that really stick with us. It's that emotional connection that the story has. Well, there's no emotional connection behind, surf spots or whatever. Okay, well, maybe for some people, to each their own, eye the beholder, as I've said numerous times today, and will continue to always say. At any rate, this with the story of the surf spots, you're talking, make sure you can see it all. Okay, cool. Just double checking the slide there. Okay. So we've got Del Mar, San Diego County, California, Ventura County line. We're talking County Line Beach, Malibu and Ventura County, California. Santa Cruz, Santa Cruz County, California. Trestles, San Onofre State Park. This is San Diego County, California. Australia's Narrabeen. I'm probably not even saying that right, but this is New South Wales. La Jolla, San Diego. San Diego County in California. That's Yeah, I mean, this some of the spots. Oh my gosh, I this probably would go on for a while. I didn't memorize or write down all the spots, but Surfin' USA, some of the spots. So yeah, I mean, it's like you can hear Del Mar and Ventura County line and Santa Cruz, and you get all these spots in the song. So if you look that up, whether it's Apple Music or the YouTube video or audio or whatever, you will see, that Chuck Berry, gets credit and royalties because the melody, I mean, it's his. He wrote it. All right. So I've shared with you the quote from Brian Wilson. Gave a huge shout out to Bruce Johnston. Man, you got to check out California Girls. I want to say a few words about Beach Boys and Pet Sounds here. This is really important because this Pet Sounds, it's a concept album. And look at the dates for just a second. Let me slow down my roll. It's like, Mr. S, man, you're like rolling through today. Yeah. May 16th, 1966. And if we look at Beatles' Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band, May 26th, 1967. We can look at songs like, Wouldn't It Be Nice? And, take a listen to that and, compare Wouldn't It Be Nice maybe to some of these other Beach Boys songs and see, like, can you hear any differences? Like, if you compare and contrast, Wouldn't It Be Nice, with, an early, like if I scroll back up and say, hey, Surfing USA, maybe, but what if you were to, maybe Surfing USA, Wouldn't It Be Nice? What if you were to go all the way back to the first hit called Surfin', and you listen to Surfing like straight up? You listen to it and you took some notes and tried to, okay, if you compare and contrast Surfin', or Surfin' Safari maybe, to scrolling back down to Wouldn't It Be Nice, there might be some interesting things that you'd have to say on the differences and sounds and, timbres and all that. So I want to challenge you to do so. And if you do take on this challenge, come back to the video and share those comments on this video. All right. Wouldn't it be nice if you participated and did that really cool thing that I just suggested? Yay, that'd be so cool to see. All right. Some things of note for the Beach Boys as we're almost to the end. Okay. Check the slide here. Okay. Yeah, you're good there. Hey, thanks for hanging with me, everybody. Glad you're having a good time with surf music and culminating with some Beach Boys. Okay, we got the Dennis Wilson story coming up and the good vibration stuff coming up. Yay, good vibes, man, good vibes. When the whole world is all, well, I mean, I hope the whole world, I think, good vibes are important. I'm trying to make sure I lead into the good vibes and always have good vibes, but close today with, good vibes or the song, actual good vibrations. But we are going to have a dark story in just a moment before the good vibes. So let's all hope, keep our fingers crossed, and just keep being optimistic and happy, and like to keep helping the whole world have as much good vibes, as possible. So if we look at 1964 and 65, Glenn Campbell was the guy that was serving as Brian Wilson's temporary replacement. So, when Bruce Johnston actually took over, yes, it was for Brian, but Glenn, he was actually taking over for Glenn. He was taking over for Brian, but Glenn was already filling the role. And they needed to, Glenn needed to do some other things. And, so it was like Brian was still like, running the show, but Glenn Campbell filled in temporarily. And then that's when they got in Bruce. And I think basically what had happened is, they're about to do a gig in New Orleans or something like that. And I want to say it was Mike Love that just called up Bruce. They called up Bruce on the phone, and they'd probably called 8, 9, 10 people. Bruce may have been the 9th or 10th person that Mike Love had called and be like, man, we need you. Can you come out? And Bruce Johnson said something along the lines, hey, I can, whether it's a few hours tomorrow, whatever. It's like, hey, I can be there for the weekend. I can meet you guys in New Orleans, and and he does the gig. He does that show, whatever shows there were in New Orleans, or maybe other places as well, but New Orleans for sure. And then he's out, then he goes back home, whatever. And of course, there's another call down the way, and maybe it was from Mike again, or maybe Brian did call him, but there's in the history books, it talks about another call or another instance where it's like, hey, we need you, we want you to come back, Bruce, come back, we want you to come in. And then part of the story is like, where Brian Wilson is talking about having Bruce, you know, singing on, California Girls, as like as one of the melodies. I mean, because there are we have some different melody lines in California Girls, but Bruce is singing one of the melody lines, in there. And Brian Wilson was very he was digging Bruce's timbre and his vibe, and like and had his own way of talking about it and reaching out. So anyway, there's more details of the story, but it is kind of interesting. Um, Brian Wilson doesn't tour anymore, and the thing about it was, I mean, let me come back to my notes for a second. I'll share part of this. So basically, the surf style of the Beach Boys, this was really largely determined by Brian Wilson. He's the oldest of the Wilson brothers, and he's the most technically proficient in the studio. He's a pretty serious kind of dude and introverted. Brian, he didn't really fit the whole sun and fun kind of carefree Beach Boy image. Nevertheless, his musical and technical leadership of the group was beyond question for sure. He has what some would say is a nervous breakdown in 1964. Whatever whether it was like a stress breakdown, a nervous breakdown, but he does have some issues in 1964. So Brian Wilson stops touring with the group, the Beach Boys, and basically just devotes himself to creating new and more serious stuff. And the result is an album released in 1966 called Pet Sounds. This is the culmination of the experimentation in more serious style once he basically stopped touring. And he's using up-to-date studio techniques and extra musicians. This Beach Boys album really kind of hints at a stylistic change. Was critically acclaimed, but it did not sell well as previous albums. Its sound, however, proved significantly influential upon the direction of rock music and other artists, including the Beatles. So I think that's kind of important. So then when that happens, they bring in a studio guy like Glenn Campbell, and then, okay, well, we've got to get someone else to come in and do some gigs. Glenn's a studio guy, and well, can we look at some other options? And Glenn's got to do this, and they probably use Glenn for some other stuff in the band as well. I mean, there's people that are in and out in some regard, but well, what about this Bruce guy we've been hearing about? Can we bring him over here? So that's, I guess, me trying to fill in some of the pieces to the puzzle, so to speak. Okay, so if we look, yeah, so this basically filling in the gaps of the Beach Boys. My something of note on slide 25 or 27 with Glenn Campbell, Brian Wilson, and Bruce Johnston. So hopefully that helps kind of get an understanding. Because Glenn Campbell, we look at like what's Bruce Johnston or Benjamin Baldwin joins the Beach Boys in New Orleans, replacing Glenn Campbell. Glenn Campbell, who was playing bass on the road and singing Brian Wilson's vocal parts. Um, but Glenn Campbell is, he's a session musician dude. But yeah, I mean, playing with the group as well. So hopefully I've tried to fill in, because it's like you look up, the Beach Boys, and you look up all these groups, and you see different people playing different instruments or whatever, and like, who's that singer? Oh wait, I thought it was this guy. So I hope that helps. Now let me go to some more This is Beach Boys, more things of note before we get to the close of today. And that would be Carl Wilson, lead vocals on several of their later hits like God Only Knows, Good Vibrations, and Kokomo. God Only Knows in 1966, Good Vibrations 1966, and Kokomo in 1988. Mike Love, he makes a comment in an interview about, he recalls that he talked about helping Paul McCartney with the lyrics of Back in the USSR, that was recorded for the Beatles' White Album in 1968. Now to the dark story before the rest of the happy good vibe story. Hopefully I have this plugged in, so let me bring my notes over. All right. Okay, so this is the Dennis Wilson and Charles Manson story. Now, before I go through this story and then the good vibe story, just checking the PowerPoint. Yay, good to go there. Dennis Wilson and Charles Manson story goes like this. Sorry, let me take a drink because I've been hanging with you for a little bit. Awesome, thank you. Just had to get a drink there. All right. One day, Dennis is driving through Malibu. He sees two female hitchhikers. He picks them up and he drops them off at, basically wherever they wanted to go. Okay. He sees them, I don't know, a few days, or he sees them again down the road. I don't know, it's a couple days, a few days, maybe it's weeks. I mean, we got speculation on that, but he ends up picking them. Dennis Wilson picks up the same two girls hitchhiking on a completely different day. And like, what? The same two girls, so he picks up these two girls hitchhiking and takes them to their destination, takes them to their house, whatever. But then they're hitchhiking again on another day. He picks them up again. This time brings them back to his house. So the first time, Dennis Wilson picks up two female hitchhikers and drops them off to the place that they were going to. All right, but okay. So, but then where he's kind of taken aback when he sees them on a completely different day and like, are those the same girls? Like hitchhike? What? Okay. Picks them up, brings them back to their house. They're hanging out. They're talking. The girls tell Dennis about their guru, Charles Manson. This is way before we know about all the dark parts of Charles Manson. So then what happens next? Dennis Wilson, he goes to a recording session, comes back later that night, and he's met in his driveway by Charles Manson. And when Wilson walked into his home, about a dozen people were occupying the premises, most of them young women. They were later known as members of the Manson family. Now, Charles Manson says that's not how it happened. He says that he had actually met Dennis Wilson at least one prior occasion at a friend's house in San Francisco, where Manson had gone to obtain marijuana. So it's like we got the A side of the story, B side of the story, and then the C side. That's like, So which way did it go? Well, we've got two accounts here. Excuse me. I'll leave it at that. Manson does claim that Wilson actually invited him to visit his Sunset Boulevard home when Manson came to Los Angeles. That's interesting right there. Now, Dennis Wilson was initially fascinated by Manson and his followers, mostly women, who were treated as servants, and they were housed in Wilson's residence. They're all basically living with the drummer, Dennis Wilson, the Beach Boys. This is around 6 months or so. And, Dennis Wilson introduces Manson to some, friends in the music biz. And it's like, hey, meet the Birds producer, Terry Melcher. And, Manson records some songs at Brian's home studio. It's like, okay, well, we hear that he's recorded these songs, but no one's ever heard them. It's like they're unheard. And you fast forward to, 1968, and Wilson records a Manson song for the Beach Boys. It's originally titled Cease to Exist, but it's reworked as Never Learn Not to Love as a single B-side released the following October. I don't think there was any credit to Manson on this one. I think more than probably, there was probably some kind of a fee or arrangement where Brian paid, a certain amount of money to use, his ideas for that song, and then no credit to Manson on the official song. So if someone writes a song and you want to sing that song and then you want to say it was yours, I mean, you can sign away the rights or pay the fee or whatever. Not everyone wants to do that, but you can dig more into that. At any rate, let's keep going with the Dennis Wilson, drummer for the Beach Boys, and what's up with this, Charles Manson story. Well, Dennis started getting, fearful of, scared, fearful, like, hey, like something's not right, Wilson started to distance himself from Manson. He moves out of the house. He basically leaves Manson and his, Manson family followers, like, he left them there at his place. And he actually moved in with Greg Jacobson at a basement apartment in Santa Monica. Now, there were rumors that suggested Dennis Wilson had become afraid of Manson. Beach Boys collaborator Van Dyke Parks later said, One day, Charles Manson brought a bullet out and shoved it to Dennis, who asked, "What's this?" And Manson replied, "It's a bullet. Every time you look at it, I want you to think how nice it is your kids are still alive." Oh my lord! Interrupting that would scare the heck out of Professor Ron. Oh my gosh! Yeah, I'm out. Okay, continuing with the quote. Well, Dennis grabbed Manson by the head and threw him to the ground and began pummeling him. I heard about it, but I wasn't there. The point is, though, Dennis Wilson wasn't afraid of anybody. Okay, so was Dennis afraid? Was he fearful? What, or did he really get in a fight with him? What, I don't know. We've got different accounts of this. Let's see what Mike Love has to say about all this Manson stuff. This is in 2016. Mike Love writes his memoir. And Mike Love talks about Wilson saying that he had witnessed Manson shooting a black man in half with an M16 rifle and hiding the body inside a well. Melcher said that Wilson had been aware that the family were killing people and had been so freaked out, he just didn't want to live anymore. He was afraid, and he thought he should have gone to the authorities, but he didn't, and the rest of it happened. Yeah, I know this is a lot of darkness and messed up stuff, you know. In the aftermath in 1969, Manson family members perpetrated the Tate LaBianca murders. Manson was apprehended. He was charged with numerous counts of murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Dennis Wilson refused to testify against Manson. He explained, "I couldn't. I was so scared." Instead, he was privately interviewed by the prosecutor, and his testimony was deemed inessential because Greg Jacobson, who Dennis Wilson moved in with after he left Manson, agreed to publicly testify and corroborate Dennis Wilson's claims. Upon Wilson's death, Manson was quoted as saying, "Dennis Wilson was killed by my shadow because he took my music and changed the words from my soul." Okay, well, whatever, dude. Manson never actually substantiated these claims, though. So I don't want to end on a dark note. I want to end on a happy note. Let's get to the good vibrations. As I always say, not all history is sugar and spice and everything nice. And, you know, this is the drummer's run in, you know, with Charles Manson, for better or for worse. All right, let's get to the good vibes, and we call it a day. Okay, check the PowerPoint as we wrap up here. All right. Okay, so we're good with 26. This is slide 27 of 27. Yay! We've made it to the end. Let's do this, everybody. Okay. So good vibes, good vibrations. Look, the real move into their second phase, basically the post-surf music phase for the Beach Boys, it comes with the release of Good Vibrations in late 1966. Had the Beach Boys stopped prior to Good Vibrations, they might be remembered only as a good rock and roll band of the early 1960s. You know, Brian Wilson, Mike Love, and the rest of the band, they worked for over 6 months on Good Vibrations. It was literally pieced together from ideas committed to tape at 4 different studios. You're talking like 90 hours of studio time, 11 versions, $50,000 in production cost. Good Vibrations was like ready to go. It was released. 90 hours, 11 versions, 50,000 production. Good Vibrations. Here we go. Let's do this. It not only hit the #1 position, but it became a million seller. Good vibes, good vibe. I'm saying good vibes. That's what the song is. Good Vibrations. So Good Vibrations was a milestone in the development of rock. Musically and technically, it was more sophisticated than any rock hit up until its time. Only the Beatles were experimenting in similar ways. Prior to this, it was assumed that a rock hit should last about 2.5 minutes. And once the tempo, beat, key, and texture were established, they should not change. Good Vibrations did not follow the formula. As Brian Wilson said in its 3 minutes, as Brian Wilson said in its 3 minutes and 35 seconds, it had a lot of riff changes. It had a lot of movements, changes. Sorry there. All right. So you're talking 3 minutes and 35 seconds, riff changes, change after change after change. They're, building harmonies. Drop this voice out. This comes in, bring in this echo chamber. Oh, wait, why don't we put a theremin in there? Bring the cello up a little louder here. I mean, this is a really wicked awesome production. I mean, it's probably their arguably their biggest production, or at least one of their biggest productions, but maybe really their biggest production, as a lot of us talk about. This is a huge production of their career, their life. The success of Good Vibrations, it does encourage Brian Wilson to pursue further experimentation. He begins to plan an album. It's going to be called Smile, and Smile would expand on many of the ideas in Pet Sounds and Good Vibrations. He was moving away not only from old surf music, but from the rest of the Beach Boys as well. His new friends, such as Van Dyke Parks, were more associated with the new free-thinking and drug-oriented culture. Man, Brian really poured his heart and soul into Smile, but when the rest of the Beach Boys came off tour to record the new material, some of the group feared that Brian's new creativity was commercially risky. Hurt and confused, Brian dropped the Smile project. And that hurt a little bit. If we look at 8 of the 20 songs were eventually released by the Beach Boys, including a Van Dyke Parks Brian Wilson collaboration called Heroes and Villains in 1967. Like Good Vibrations, Heroes and Villains, if I can say that, like Good Vibrations, Heroes and Villains avoided rock formulas and involved frequent changes in texture, rhythm, and timbre. The album that was released in place of the aborted Smile album was called Smiley Smile. Sales were poor, and Smiley Smile marked the beginning of the decline of the Beach Boys' popularity. If we go up to 2004, Brian Wilson, with the help of Van Dyke Parks, officially released Smile and promoted the release with a national tour, bringing his Teenage Symphony to God. This is Wilson's description. So it's basically bringing his Teenage Symphony to God back from extinction. I should say that correctly there. Another Parks-Wilson collaboration, That Lucky Old Sun, was released in 2008. Brian Wilson took on this task of completing 2 unfinished compositions by American composer George Gershwin, released in 2010 as Brian Wilson Reimagines Gershwin. So, after the release of Beatles' Sgt. Pepper album in 1967, really a new world of rock exploded. Although the Beach Boys were closely paralleling the creative growth of the Beatles, they were still associated with the old surf sound, hopelessly naive and innocent sounding by 1967 standards. Look, in spite of continued efforts by Brian, Carl, and the others, their greatest success in the 1970s and early 1980s would lie in the realm of nostalgia. In 1988, they do hit the charts again with Kokomo. It's featured on the soundtrack of Cocktail. This is a film. It's a movie with Tom Cruise. We could kind of speculate that if Smile had been released at about the same time as Sgt. Pepper, the story of the Beach Boys might have been very different. So that's it. So for all those that are watching now, or for those that watch in the days, weeks, months, or years ahead, I hope you had fun learning about surf music, instrumental surf, music of the time that inspired surf, and of course ending with, vocal surf and the Beach Boys. It's a lot of music to talk about in this session, but, good times are had by all. So, hey, thanks everybody for watching. As I always say, that's a wrap for today. Stay tuned. I can talk as I end this session. Stay tuned for my next lecture where we get to talk about the history of dance music. I'm Professor Ron. Enjoy your life. Enjoy the music. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye, everybody. I got to find the camera correctly. See, I always do this.